At 39, after months of silence and absence, Arionne Curry has finally decided to speak, and the breaking point wasn't a headline, a rumor, or a confrontation. It was a party she wasn't invited to. When the reunion taping happened without her, when everyone else gathered, took photos, celebrated, and rewrote the narrative of the past while leaving her name completely erased, that was the moment she snapped the silence. For years she has been discussed, blamed, referenced, and judged by people sitting at tables she was never allowed to sit at. But being excluded from the reunion wasn't just a scheduling decision, it was a statement. And that statement is what pushed Arionne to finally break the silence she held for so long. Now that she has opened her mouth, she is not whispering, she is telling what she saw, how it felt, and what they never wanted the audience to hear from her directly. For years, Arionne Curry has existed on the edge of the story, central to the conflict but never given a seat in the narrative. Her name has been used in confessionals, arguments, interviews, and episodes. Yet she herself has been kept outside every official conversation. She was allowed to carry the blame, but never allowed to speak her own piece. That imbalance, being present in the storyline but absent from the table, created a silence that people mistook for guilt, weakness, or defeat. But when the reunion took place without her, it was more than a no invite, it was an erasure. A public decision to close the chapter without allowing the person at the center of it to say a single word. That kind of silence is not accidental, it is curated. And it is exactly why her decision to finally speak now carries so much weight. Stay until the end, because what Arionne chose to reveal after being excluded doesn't just explain her silence, it exposes why they never wanted her in the room to begin with. To understand why her exclusion mattered so deeply, you have to return to the beginning, to the season when Arionne Curry was not on screen, but her shadow was in every storyline. She was never cast, never mic'd, never filmed, yet she was the reason some of the most explosive moments in Huntsville history even happened. Her name lived in arguments, in betrayal arcs, in divorce papers, in therapy sessions, in confessionals, but when it came time for the camera to offer her a chair, the door stayed shut. She became the most talked about woman who never got to speak. Others told her story for her. Others defined her role. Others narrated her intentions, her character, her actions, while she watched her identity get reshaped by people she never got to respond to. For years, she carried the weight of being the cause without being allowed to correct, explain, or defend anything. She was turned into a character in a show she wasn't allowed to enter, and every season that passed without her presence only strengthened one message. You are significant enough to blame, but not significant enough to speak. That's the wound that built over time, not just the scandal itself, but the controlled silence around it. And when the reunion, the one place where the final word is supposed to be spoken, happened without her, it wasn't just another exclusion. It was official closure written without the one person who helped write the conflict. The reunion was supposed to be the moment where unfinished stories meet their final sentences, where everyone involved gets a chance to speak their truth on record. Invitations went out, outfits were chosen, cameras were powered up, the cast assembled under bright lights, and Arionne's name was nowhere on the list. Not forgotten, excluded, not overlooked, eliminated. The show moved forward without the woman whose existence shaped half the narrative. That deliberate omission told her more than any words could. They were ready to close the book without ever letting her write a single line of her own chapter. She watched, in silence, as others sat on couches discussing her life, her choices, her role, again, without her in the room. They got makeup and microphones. She got silence. They got closure. She got erasure. That was the moment something inside her snapped. Not in anger, in resolve. Because exclusion wasn't just an insult. It was a message that the truth she holds was never going to be allowed on their stage. And once she understood that the door would never open for her, she made a decision. She would speak without their permission. When Arionne finally broke her silence, she didn't explode with rage, she spoke with the calm of someone who has held the truth for too long. She admitted that being left out wasn't what hurt the most. What hurt was watching people rewrite a story she lived through while she was forced to sit in the dark. She revealed that she stayed quiet, not because she had nothing to say, but because she believed there would eventually come a moment for her to speak in the same space where she had been judged. Now she knows that moment was never coming. She confessed that she watched cast members tell versions of events that were edited, filtered, and performed, while the real conversations, the real intentions, the real history remained buried off camera. She admitted she has held back details out of restraint, out of protection, and out of a belief that maturity meant not feeding the fire. But exclusion changed that. She said plainly that silence is over. Not because she wants attention, but because she refuses to let others keep writing narratives that erase her reality. Her tone wasn't defensive, it was almost tired, the kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying truth in isolation for years. And in that confession, she made it clear, she is not speaking to be part of their story anymore, she is speaking to reclaim her own. Arionne did not stay silent. Because she was scared, she stayed silent, because she understood that speaking at the wrong time can destroy you more than the truth ever could. She held her words for 3 reasons: self-protection, emotional exhaustion, and the belief that silence would eventually buy her peace. She knew that if she had spoken before, her words would have been twisted, edited, and used against her, not heard for what they were. She also stayed quiet because she was tired. Tired of being the headline without being human. Tired of defending herself while others were paid to attack. Tired of fighting a battle she was never given a microphone in. And perhaps the greatest reason of all, she believed that stepping back would eventually allow life to move on without reopening wounds. She chose silence, hoping time would bury the pain. But silence only works when everyone else is silent too. The cast kept talking. The narrative kept evolving. Her name kept circulating while her voice was muted. Arionne. Breaking her silence is bigger than a personal confession. It exposes how reality television decides who gets to be human and who gets to be a storyline. Her absence from the reunion proved that sometimes exclusion is not about protecting the cast, it's about protecting a narrative. They could face each other, but they could not face the one person who knew the parts that never made it to camera. Her silence all these years showed that she was willing to let the world move on without her, as long as she was left in peace. But the moment they tried to close the book without ever letting her speak, the meaning of her silence changed. It was no longer restraint, it was erasure. And when silence becomes erasure, speaking becomes survival. Her return doesn't just reopen old wounds. It forces everyone to confront a truth they never prepared for. You cannot erase someone's role in a story they lived through. You can exclude her from the room, but you cannot erase her from the history by speaking now. Arionne is not asking to be included, she is taking back authorship of the one thing they tried to take from her. Her truth. Being attacked hurts, but being erased is worse. Arionne didn't break down because people talked about her. She broke down because they tried to write the ending without her name existing at all. The reunion wasn't just a party she missed, it was a public attempt to close a story while pretending she never existed in it. That is the kind of wound silence cannot heal. By finally speaking, she is not asking for a seat, not asking for acceptance, not asking for forgiveness. She is reclaiming something more powerful: her presence in the truth. The cost of exclusion is that the excluded eventually stop protecting what they know, and Arionne's decision to speak now proves that you can push someone into the silence, but you cannot expect them to stay there forever. In the end, her voice arrived late, but not too late, because the truth does not expire just because someone else tried to close the door. So now the question falls to you. Did Arionne finally speak because she is telling a truth that was never allowed to be heard, or because being erased pushed her past her breaking point? Was this honesty, or a response to being shut out of the final chapter of a story she helped create? Tell me what you believe in the comments below. If you want part 2 where we break down exactly what her admission changes, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next.